Are you gonna dance?
Dun, 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 dun. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Lit RPG podcast. I am Ramon Mejia. I'm always here to bring you the latest RPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. And this week, it's the author interview thing. So it's always fun for me. This week, I'm talking to Gabriel Rathweg, author of Earth Online and the Warrior Academy series. He's here to talk about the Warrior Academy specifically. It's a third book in his particular series called Tournament of Heroes, Part 1, which means there's going to be hopefully a Part 2, as long as it hopefully gets enough sales. That's always the thing. But welcome to the show, Gabriel Rathweg.
Ramon, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And I didn't even check. Is it actually, am I saying that right? Gabriel Rathweg?
Yeah, you are,
Okay.
actually.
Just
Surprisingly.
making sure. I usually check beforehand and I realize, wait, that might not be how he says it. But thank you. So thank you for making good stuff there. You've been an author for, you've been an author for quite a few years, I believe. I've only known your stuff from the Lit RPG community. Can you tell me a little bit about your background, yourself, for the audience who isn't familiar with your work?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, let me just say once again, man, thank you for having me on. Like I said before, like I've been wanting to be on this since I started. I was like, Ramon's the first goal. So thanks for having me on, man. Um, I've always written, but I never published anything because I was always like, nah, this is not gonna be good enough, you know? I don't know if you as a writer, you have that feeling ever.
Yeah, every time I put out a book, I have that feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, it's oh god, it's such a hard thing to get over for me. Like anyway, I'll go back to that later. But yeah, so I've written like lots of short stories and you know started books and not finished them, started books and deleted them. You know, just like this is crap. And then but it actually wasn't until I started reading Lit RPG, and I want to say that was the it was Alaron, uh, Blaze, you, uh, Charles, Dean, and what's that? Dragon's Wrath. Brett Roth? No, is it Brent?
Yeah, that's it. That's you got a good call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I started. Yeah, that was like that one. I think that was the first one I read was the Dragon's Wrath, and I was like, this is crazy amazing, you know. And and then I found the rest of them, and I was like, God, this is the books I want to write. People are writing them. How the hell are they writing them? I didn't know about this. It's like I got to do it now. Like I have to write now. If I don't, like I'm just gonna shoot myself or something. I don't know.
No, I absolutely understand that feeling. I had the same one when I chose to become a writer. I was like reading a bunch of stuff that I loved, and it was just filling me up with so many story ideas that they were just pouring out of me, and I had to put them somewhere. For me, I wasn't a writer my whole life like you. It seems like writing is hard for me. I the only thing I ever first wrote was that first book. That was really the only creative thing I'd ever done in my life. And for me, it was always like, oh, this is a process. I'm gonna write a thing, I'm gonna publish it. And in my ignorance, it's just like, oh, that's what people do, right? They write and then they publish. There's why else would they write? And so for me, it was a matter of ignorance, like, oh, even if nobody reads it, like, oh, there's a point to writing, like something like this. And so and also I was influenced by, of course, all those other authors who were amateur authors, but they still told amazing stories and there was an audience there. And heck, I was one of them. I was purchasing probably more than I can afford. But it was definitely a passion. And it's those guys who inspired me as well to like, oh, I can do this too. And people were going to read this. Yeah, sure. Why not? So I totally absolutely get what you're saying.
It's really funny because like on that same vein, like I found the first Dragon's Wrath, yeah, and I'm like, okay, and then like I just went like I would say like kind of manic, insane, and just like tried to find every single one I could. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
where's this one? Like I was on iTunes, I was on Amazon, I was on everywhere. I was like, oh, and I couldn't find anything else to read. And I was like, oh no, like
Yeah,
I think
I started using search terms like game stories and in virtual reality stories and a bunch of other because I didn't actually recognize that there was a term for it yet until like I read I think it was Vasily Mahenko's story where he's like, oh, this is lit RPG, and I was like, oh, there's my search term, there's my name, and from there it's just like, oh, there's the rabbit hole.
I forgot to mention those guys, Vasily
Oh,
Mahenko and uh, oh my God, why am I missing the first book I read was the Russian Alter
alter
World
game? Was that
Alter
alter?
Alter,
Okay,
Alter, Alter
yeah,
World?
there's a couple alters. The alter game is a newer one. There's also um, a few others that are
Just,
breaking my brain right now. No, I have a whole list of them on the site. But yeah, there's a lot of Russian authors who are
yeah.
definitely influential in bringing liberty to the United States. And I think a lot of the writers who are American are like, oh yeah, that's where I started on too. It was like The Way of the Shaman or World of something else
Valterra?
and
Oh,
World and
Valterra?
a bunch of other stuff, which are escaping my brain at the moment. But like, there's a lot of authors who were just like influential, like, oh, because they had already written like 5 or 6 years ago and they were just being translated in English. And so there are a lot of influences like we both, I think, have in commonality.
I feel like this whole little community we have, like all these little lit RPG writers or game lit. I don't know what everybody's going with. I'm trying to stay out of the whole
It's a
thing.
thing, yeah.
You know, I'm like, just buy my book. Be nice
It's
to me.
like I just write stuff.
Exactly. But I feel like we're all like kind of started the same way. We're all like, what? They make these stories, you know? I can write these stories. I want to read these stories. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So there you
That's
go.
my
Now,
yeah.
perfect. Now I ask you, do you have like a background like writing or like gaming at all that has influenced your decision to like come to this kind of writing, why it works for you?
You know, I don't have like a technical background in it because I did other stuff. Like
Yeah.
I went to school, I got a degree in digital media, you know, and then I didn't do that and I ended up running restaurants. Like I was a general manager of a restaurant for like 10 years, you know, and then I stopped doing that and started bartending. I was like, everything but this field.
The thing you went to school for. Yeah.
Yeah, everything but that. And like one day I was just like, I don't want to do this stuff anymore, you know? Like I want to write books. These guys are writing books, I want to write books.
Hmm.
So instead of like going out and hanging out and not doing stuff, like I was like, I'm gonna go home and write. And I'm gonna write and I'm gonna write until it's like I'm sick of writing.
No, that hey, that's a much better use of your time than getting into trouble or other things. So that's good for me. I know a lot of authors who feel the same way. They're like, oh, this is a thing. It just became a thing for me. And for me, it was almost accidental. But I understand that you've had a long history, like, oh, being creative in this respect. And that's where you put your creativity, whether we're short stories or just unfinished novels. I think to me that experience is as useful as a technical degree in respect that you're actually doing a thing, and the more you do a thing, the better you become at it. To read what I forget what thing was like 1,000 hours master
Malcolm
or something.
Gladwell.
Nothing rather.
Yeah, that's like 10,000 hours makes you an expert, you know?
Yeah, in anything, and it's just practicing and doing instead of just wanting to do a thing. Like the actual step from dreaming and doing is really big for some people. Like it's an impossible leap for many people, in that they can never actually take that first step of 1,000 miles. But you did, and you're here, and so that's always something to be proud of.
I don't know about you, but like the minute like I hit publish on my first book, I was just like, I did it, you know, and I didn't care if anybody read it or not either. I was like, I don't care. I did it. It's done. And like just like this huge weight, I don't know, even more than that, just like lifted off of me, you know? Just that first release was just so cathartic, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying, and then I actually agree that it can be very relieving, or almost, yeah, it's just almost kind of like, oh, I put all this effort into this thing, and here's the payoff. It's out there in the world for people to judge, and whether or not it's going to succeed or not, I have no idea. But it's done. It's there. The process has finished in that respect, and so there's something special about that. And I really do understand that emotional release of so many different conflicting ideas, especially when you've been writing these other characters in your brain for such a long time. It's like, oh, bam, there it goes. And it's also then, of course, the anxiety like, are people going to read it? What are those reviews going to be? But that's like a separate concept. So before we move on too much into the writer stuff, tell me about your stories. Remember, this is not just for geeks like me who actually read your stuff and enjoyed them. We also want to make sure that people who are watching this the first time understand something about your stories. So you have two series in the little RPG community. Can you tell me about both of them?
Yes, I will. Give me 1 second. I don't know what this is, but there's an alarm going off. Let me shut this door.
Sure,
One
sure.
second.
No problem.
1 second. Uh,
Yeah,
that's
sorry,
better.
vamping.
No, it's cool. Dance time is perfectly viable airtime.
Yeah, that's what I say. So your novel series, we have Earth Online, and we also have Warrior Academy. Tell me first about Warrior Academy, since that's the one that you have the most recent novel coming out of.
Okay, so Warrior Academy. That is my. So when I was in high school, so I'm 36 now. So 18 years ago, I wanted to do uh, ninja high school. Like that was like, man, what would be so cool is if we had like ninja high school, and like me and my buddies talked about that all the time. And as the years went by, like, I never did it, and I always thought about it, and I always wanted to do it. And I'm kind of like an addict on anime. I don't know, like I
Yeah,
love anime. I love pretty much all forms of media that is dorky, anime, video games, board games. I mean, whatever it is, I'm there. And music, which isn't considered dorky, but some of
yeah,
it,
that
but
was for
whatever.
the music was for the cool kids in my neighborhood. I was like, oh yeah, yeah. But I know what you're saying. So you have all of these influences, and how did that lead you into actually writing a story that is Warrior Academy?
So, I guess I should start like so. I started writing Earth Online.
Hmm.
Well, I'll just gloss over this real quick. I started writing
No,
Earth Online, and I was like, I can. I didn't know how to write the over the top like fight scenes. I didn't know how to like put into words like what I was thinking about with like the anime. Like, how do you describe this? Just like I just couldn't figure it out.
no, it's a very visual medium, so I definitely understand that there may be a hard transition from the pictures you have in your brain, which are very over the top sometimes, if you're pulling from anime, and putting them and distilling them into sentences and little letters next to each other.
Yeah, that is trying to go. I mean, trying to go from like your picture to the to paper is tough. But when I was writing Earth Online, I was like, oh, okay, and I started figuring it out. Like as I was writing Earth Online, I was like, oh, if I do that, I can do this. So I finished, I think my second book in Earth Online, my second novella,
Mm.
or I don't even know. It's not. It's like I don't even know what to call it.
I'll just say
Mini
story.
mini
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
But I was like, oh, that's how you do that. And so after I figured that out, I was like, okay, I can write these anime fight scenes and over the top stuff, and then play this story I want to play out. So I guess like I've had all these characters working in my head for a long time, like years, if on years, and I kind of wanted to bring all this like 18, 20 years of my life of like watching anime and try to get all these like different tropes they have and put it into a book. So that's kind of the basis of it.
Sure, perfect. Let me give a quick description for the audience of what those
Oh
series
yeah,
are, kind of in a nutshell, a little bit. Earth Online, which is your first series, is definitely a unique story. It's a I describe it as like lit RPG stoner comedy set in the game world, and I think it's super hilarious. I'm into stoner comedies, Kevin Smith, everybody. I'm a big Kevin Smith fan personally, and so I
ditto.
like that kind of stuff, which is why it appeals to me. Um, but it definitely is. It has like marijuana use, but it's also incorporates like this over the top like pop culture references, with like transporting the main character to a game world where everything's ruled by game mechanics, and it goes on these ventures with these very specifically interesting characters of a great variety, and has a huge amount of fun and great time, and it's really action adventure. But there is very much this like stoner culture within the novel, which is not as appealing to everyone, which I absolutely recognize. But for those people where it hits, they're really big fans of that particular series. Now, Warrior Academy, I think, is a little more mass appealing in that there's no drugs, there's no stoner comedy on it. It's more like it's a slice of life high school academy story with ninjas and like even more pop culture references if that's possible. And I mean, I think you have like references to game stuff, you have references to anime, regular fiction novels. I mean, the just like all the different academy schools right now, and people will recognize each one of them for me.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was honestly like, name all the academies in your school system, and people are going to recognize those names. Like, what are they all called?
Oh, well, I have like Warrior Academy, which is WA. Then I have SNS, obviously,
Hmm.
and which is Samurai Ninja Entry School, and then I have RKP, which is Royal Knight Preparatory, but if you flip it, it's PKer. So it's just Warrior Academy is like uh, my my way to write about everything that I love, and
Right.
it's the only way I could think of like incorporate all the things that I really love. Like
Right.
I like
Yeah, because you have like years and semesters that you're. I think you say in the notes like, oh, this is book one of like 13 or 14, and so you have all these like school years planned out, and there's plenty of time and room in there to put everything that you love in there. I think.
I'm hoping so. That's because I'm trying to make it like it. Like most anime series are like 13 to 26 episodes, and so I'm trying to make it, a serial anime, which is tough, just because people don't like short books.
Not that
You
yours are
know,
like super short though. I mean, they're not. It's not like they're 50 pages. They're all like I believe well over 100 at
well,
least.
sorry, they're
Yes,
they're
I
all
think they're
fifty
all like
thousand
over.
words. They're all 50,000 words.
Right.
So like I make them all at minimum 50,000 words, and that's my goal because that's enough time to tell a part of a story and to get you in the next part. Because I think most novels are about 100,000 words is the industry whatever. I don't
I
know.
don't know. I don't.
Everything's
I
different.
don't. I don't think we use a lot of industry standards in an RPG. It's just like our novels are like, 500 pages, 600, 700 sometimes, and so
True.
we don't use a lot of industry standards. I think.
That's true. But which is what I love about it because it's such a different genre and you can do so much stuff with it. Like I love that we can put game stuff in and then not have to go by like literary strictures.
Right.
Like that's my biggest thing is I don't know if you noticed, but when I write, like I have like OMGs and stupid, clang clang and stuff like
Oh
that.
yeah, I meant to ask you. Like, this is something that popped up when I was reading your last story. I was like, SMH. Like,
Oh,
what's that? I was like,
shaking my head, man.
oh, you were. Oh man, my wife was right. She told me like, no, and I'm an old lady too. But I had to look this up when one of my students used it in like the discussion board for school. And like, really, it means shake my head. I'm like, that seems unnecessarily like abbreviated. Like, can't you have the person shake their head? I'm like, oh, okay. It's he's using gamer speak. It's in the future. Like all the pop culture and like text references just have been ingrained and twisted in some weird ways. So I guess that makes sense. But I'm like, I kept seeing. I'm like, are you sure that's what it means? It's not like I don't know, shit in my hands or something like that. So, so okay. So thanks for answering that. That was
Oh,
my audience question. But yeah, so you use a lot of those like weird, you use non-conventional writing techniques in your stories all the time.
yeah, I really think with Warrior Academy, I'm targeting a younger demographic. It's for teenagers. It's from 7th, 8th grade up. So I want to make sure that kids that age can read it and understand what's going on, and
I, I,
they
I
just talk
almost,
different.
yeah, I almost want to disagree with you that you're targeting that audience because like you make some Belmont references. I'm like, I don't know that we have like a really great Castlevania game, like a really long time. I don't know if they're gonna get those points, man.
Oh no, gamers know that stuff, man. They just put a new Castlevania on
Yeah, like
Netflix.
old gamers, our age gamers love that stuff, man. Like if you're going for like teeny boppers, I'm like, oh, we haven't had like a good Castlevania game like in almost like decades. So I'm like, okay, but
That's true. That's true. That's true. But
I think yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
I think you're hitting the point. I definitely hitting the demographic with like the anime references and that kind of stuff. Without it, I think but a lot of like the basis of what you're using is like, oh, it appeals to like older guys like me too, which is why I like it. Maybe I just have a teenage mentality, and that's why it works for me. But I think you're hitting a lot of a larger audience besides like necessarily teens. Like I don't want to peg your stories like, oh, these are just YA fiction. Like these are definitely appealing, at least to me, for people who are gamers, especially older gamers. You're going to get a lot of like the tinier, like funnier, like references that you make.
And I threw that in there because I figured like 'cause I love this kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
when I read it, I want to be able to see those things. So that's what the other names are for, too. Like you said for that. But I expected it to like resonate with people older and be like, oh yeah, I got all these things. But it's kind of been like people expect like are thinking it's written for an older crowd and are and I get that and I see that. So it's kind of Yeah, it makes sense that it's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you intended it, you basically intended it for like the teen audience, and a bunch of old guys like me are really like, oh, this is really awesome. I guess maybe we all want to like be young again. We all remember our high school years, so we have that connection to these events. I think a little bit maybe, but like, yeah, hey, as long as people are buying it, like I'd rather have like the grown-ups with all the extra money, buy my stories, than having. I mean, I like teens and everything, but I'm like, yeah, those guys have money, and that's okay. I have bills to pay.
That's true. That's 100% true.
So
Yeah, it was kind of a shock to see how many people like that read it like didn't think of it as young adult fiction
hmm?
and like were very vocal about it.
Okay, no, you don't. I definitely. When I looking at your pages today between like Earth Online and Warrior Academy, there's definitely like I said, a much bigger audience for Warrior Academy, I should say. Earth Online, I think book one has like 12 reviews.
Yeah.
Warrior Academy has like 59. So I'm like, oh yeah, this one's definitely at least getting picked up more by people, whether they like it or not. Is a matter of opinion and difference. But like, oh, at least a lot more people are giving this one a chance. So at least in marketing terms, like, oh, it's appealing to more and more people.
Yeah, Warrior Academy is definitely much more mainstream. It's definitely more accessible for everybody, and I wrote it that way too to be. There's no cuss words, there's no real bad thing. Even the fight scenes, there's nothing really brutal. It's like everything I kept to like PG-13.
Right.
Like just because I would hate for like when we were kids. Like I don't know, you're about my age ish.
Yeah, no, I'm actually your age exactly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
um, but when I was like 11, 12, I had watched Pet Cemetery and, Death Wish on TV. I mean? Like in Argentina, like we saw stuff that was a little bit not what they can see now.
Oh, the internet makes that I think that makes that statement entirely inaccurate. I think
Oh gosh, that's
once
true.
kids get access to computers, once they go to school, or cell phones or like tablets, whatever, they have access to the wide ranging horrors and beauty that is the internet. And they can see all those movies you're talking about for free and a bunch of other stuff that you may or may not want your kids to be exposed to. So I think as far as like them being maybe mentally prepared for it, I have no idea, but I think kids are exposed to even more things than we were.
I think you're right about that, but I think more of in like the adults around them are more quick to crack down on stuff now they
Oh,
think
okay.
is bad. So like I tried to make it so like Jimmy's dad would be like, "What are you reading?" Because
Like
like the
ninjas.
kids see it, but like parents get a little
Okay.
more. Yeah, I
We
had
have
them get
more
more.
helicopter parents. Got it. Okay.
Where were we? What were we talking about?
I don't know. I think we both got lost somewhere. We're talking about your series. What
Oh,
were they about? And I think if you want to give me like a quick blurb about Warrior Academy as this series, I think that'd be like a good place to like transition into like author questions.
should I read it?
If you want, sure. If you have it up.
I will in a second. Um, you know, I, I forget stuff that. Do you forget the stuff that you write sometimes?
I have in the past, but that's, I mean, I try to keep really good notes as far as like, I have like spreadsheets and spreadsheets on my computer of like, oh, these are all my names and these are their events and these are their powers and abilities and like story points and stuff. Otherwise my brain kind of just like skips places sometimes.
I'll show you after later on, but on the walls around my room are just papers
Yeah, I
taped
can
on the
actually see them in the
wall.
corner in one of the walls over there.
Let me see.
Like I'm
Maybe
like,
I
oh,
can.
are those straight ideas? I almost want to zoom in, um,
No, they're
and
notes.
like and get hints.
They're how I keep track of them. So like I'll show you at the end, but like I have like 5 pages that I have list all the faculty members and their
Oh, okay.
names, and then I have like my what classes have how many students, and what was the name of these schools, and how many affinities does this guy get. Like it's just stuff that you like, oh god, I never had to keep track of that in a second book before.
Yeah. Well, okay. So it looks like we do the same thing. You just do it hardcover, or a hard print version instead of like digitally, like in Excel sheets. Then.
I like to when I'm working, I stand and I like to walk around. My desk is a standing desk,
Right.
so I'm always like kind of pacing and walking around, so it's a little bit easier for me to do it that way. um
No, that's
anyway,
cool. I mean,
go ahead.
yeah, no, no, like different creative people, their process are different. and that's something we'll talk about in a little bit as far as like, oh, how do you work? What's your style? So we have Earth Online, we have Hero Academy, and I think you're just going to read a quick blurb about Hero Academy so people have like an idea of like what the story is about.
Got it. All right. So here we go. So Warrior Academy. After the world is destroyed, humanity's survivors start anew. Now in a world forever changed, a place where magic is real and monsters have come to life. A place where magic and science blend with pop culture. Welcome to Warrior Academy. Then you have if you like video games, music, anime, and just pop culture in general, you will love Warrior Academy. It's Harry Potter meets Naruto with a little Dragon Ball Z and Dungeons and Dragons thrown in for fun. And don't forget a smattering of High School Musical.
So there we go. I think that's a really good explanation. Like, oh, all the different variety of pop culture and influences, anime, novels, fictions, video game references. So it does kind of mush them all that. And if you're into pop culture, and you like all that stuff, this definitely hits the spot for you. Not everybody is, and that's okay. Not every novel is for everybody, but it's definitely an appealing story to me. I'm a big fan of your work, so I've always liked them all. Okay,
Thanks,
so.
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Honestly, if I didn't like your stuff, you wouldn't be here, to be honest. And I think I've reviewed just about everything you've written as far as like little RPG goes. And with like a very few, with the very
I
few.
haven't published anything else
Yeah.
besides Literature.
So then I totally read everything you published, and I think with like a rare exception, I liked just about every single thing that I've ever read. But again, I'm also kind of weird, so maybe that's what appeals to me.
I don't know, man. I remember the first review you gave me.
Well, that was very specifically like, this is not Lit RPG yet. I'm like, I recognize that it was like part of a serial story, but that's the thing. I'm like, there's no real Lit RPG here yet. Maybe in the future, which is why I said mostly given a good reason. I still thought it was interesting, but that first book, I'm like, oh no, this is the setup. He hasn't got to the game yet, really. He hasn't got to the RPG mechanics. He hasn't got to like the RPG stuff that I love about Lit RPG yet. But I recognize, oh, he will. It's just it didn't hit this episode yet, and I was okay with that because there were a lot of other interesting things about it, like including I guess a good time. Like one of the most interesting things about all your shoes that I've always enjoyed is that you have accompanying theme music for every single chapter. And I think it's the first time I've ever seen that as far as like anything in our genre. Well, everything I've ever read, honestly, a novel having theme music for every single chapter. And the first time I tried it out, I was like, as I was reading, I was like, oh wow, this definitely adds a layer of like flavor to the story that wouldn't otherwise be there. And I thought it was so amazing. I think I talked about it for like weeks and weeks and weeks on the podcast. Anytime I saw a novel, I always mention like, this thing has a playlist. Go check it out. There's some really cool music that I've never heard because I'm kind of a music idiot. I don't have a lot of things that I listen to musically. So even just like on that respect, like hearing cool music, I'm like, oh, some of this is cool. Some of this is like, oh, my ears hurt, but it's interesting at least. So it's always really fun. That I think that's something that is very unique, I guess, to your particular novels.
Yeah, that's really what my main thing is what I wanted to do is I wanted a musical track with my book. That's the main thing. When I listen to music or when I read, I'm always listening to music. Like I'm listening to music pretty much 90% of the time if I can, you know. It's just how I am. I love music. I love all different kinds of music, and it helps me focus and actually really helps my creativity. Real quick, I was just knocking with you on that first review. It was actually the best review I've ever gotten, and for a constructive criticism piece, like I read that and I was like, oh yeah, I get it, and it helped me a lot with my second and third books just to figure out, you know, I should do more things in it. So thank you for that, by the way. Because you don't normally get constructive criticism. You just get like, this is a really great story wasting a bad author.
Yeah, I'm sure you've actually gotten those reviews as have I and as have everybody who's in the genre. But I try to make my reviews less about like, oh, I like this, I don't, but here's why as well, because those are also the kind of reviews I would like to get, to be honest. So,
which is just more helpful, you know. But
so you're saying music plays a huge part of your life. How do you? I'm kind of curious because I'm not a music person. So the whole musical side of life is very much almost a mystery to me. Like I know people like listen to music all the time, and my mom is kind of that way. But how do you decide what songs to go with your chapters, or do you have a song in mind, and then that kind of influences the writing of that chapter? How do you incorporate two essentially different stimuli into the same artistic piece?
So the first thing I think is like I'm not saying I have ADD or anything like that, but I do have a pretty short attention span. Um, and like having multiple things going on for me is really helpful. And music is always just like helps me focus. I don't know, it's just always since I was young. But with the writing, what I do is it's a couple different ways. So when I'm writing, sitting in my office and working, I just put on a playlist of random songs and listen to them. And then if I find one that's like really good, I'll add it to this main playlist I have. And I
Mm-hmm.
have this playlist of for just test playlist I call it with about 1,000 different songs that I just keep adding to and adding to. And while I write a scene, I'm like, man, this song I'm listening to does not go with this scene. So I stop. I'm like, what am I trying to do? Okay, what music will go with that scene I'm writing? And then I'll go through my library and be like, oh, oh man, Rancid by blah 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 is great, or Talking Heads, or The Cure. That's the band I want to play this song. So I'll pick them up and start listening to their music while I'm writing, and then I'll find the song that fits, and then I'll play that song on repeat until it's like such a terrible song, and my girlfriend wants to stab me because she's heard it 25,000 times over and over again, and then I finish a chapter of that song. The other way I do it is I use Spotify
Mm-hmm.
a lot. So whenever I find a song that like catches my interest, I'm like, oh, that song would be great for this idea I've had. I tag that song and then write a scene for it. So it's kind of two different ways, I guess. Yeah.
No, no, I mean that totally makes sense. I don't use music that way in my life in general. I listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks. Like music has never been that huge a part of my life. So I'm always curious about, because I understand that it's just from your writing and just from like the variety of songs that you have in your stuff. I'm like, music is really important to Gabriel. Like you can tell it's a big influencer in your life just from like your writing and like how you're connecting these songs to these words. And for me, that's almost a mystery because that's not how my brain works at all. If anything, it's the opposite. Like I require like this calm, quiet place for these things that happen. I'm more influenced as far as that the type of things I write is like by visual medium, like movies. And like if I want to write a fight scene about kung fu, I'll go watch some kung fu movie for like 6 hours. Jackie Chan, Jet Li, whatever the case is, and I'll get those visual images in my head, and then I go back to writing. I'm like, oh, and I can see all those moves now in my head. You know what I mean? But if it sounds like for me, like for you, it's music does something similar for your mind. Like and it almost sounds like to me like you're picking the score for your movie in a lot of ways, and your the tones of those songs are supposed to enhance the tones of those chapters. And I found that to be the case a lot of times. Sometimes the music doesn't, I don't know it well enough so that it doesn't have that same effect for me. But that's like me personally. People who are more musically inclined, I'm sure those musics when it's like they'll giggle and they'll laugh because like, oh, I know what that song is about, and while they're reading, they're like, oh yeah, I get it. And for me, that happens sometimes. But a lot of it's just like, oh, this is cool music, and this is a cool book too.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's the pretty much the goal, because like the music for me, music is kind of like background,
Mm-hmm.
and it's always in the background. And then music also like it makes you, for me, it makes me remember certain things, and it also like makes me feel certain ways. So like you put on like a hardcore score and you're like, oh man, I'm getting pretty amped up. Or you hear like a sad song, you're like, oh yeah, So it kind of just helps me set the tone for the story. Um, but yeah, I think music along with reading, because they're both the arts like touch something emotional in you, and I
Right,
feel like,
totally. Yeah.
or movies too, like visually, like movies, the same, like with the same thing we're doing, except you're doing it with movies, and that's what you're getting your, like it's getting your creative juices flowing. Whereas like music for me, but I don't know, I just something about like certain songs triggers memories, like kind of like how people have certain smells and stuff like that. So it's just like I hit that. I'm like, you know what? That makes perfect sense for this, and vice versa. I know
Right
I'm
now.
like putting my hands everywhere, and you can't see them in the screen. So
It's okay. No, no. And speaking of memories, that's another interesting thing that you do with your writing. And I've noticed it from Earth Online and then into Wear Academy. You actually do memory scenes, which I think is a very interesting way, and they're kept separate of the main character's past or like some other character's past and how it's tying into this particular story. I thought those are interesting as well, in that you're mixing past and future stories essentially in the same novel. And it's a very interesting, like, and it makes more sense now in the way they're describing how music impacts your mind, and that this song is associated heavily with this memory and this feeling and this contextualization, like, and a song can bring you right back to this memory in the same way in the novel the a cube or some other like influence brings this character right into the exact living memory that's being described. So
um, so do you remember Being John Malkovich?
yeah. Oh, I don't think I ever saw that. I don't think I saw the movie. I remember seeing trailers for it and parts of it though.
I remember I watched that movie and I was like, this is the coolest idea ever. Could I just go watch somebody's memories in a first person view and enjoy it? Like, that's awesome. And then I was like, I hate when I'm reading a book and I have to read like 2 chapters of backstory.
Right.
It's just like setting up everything. Like, I like backstory, but I don't like so much backstory that like you can't get to the story. Like, I like to learn about the people as they grow. And I was like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I can do this thing where you learn a little bit and that you can still tell the story, and you learn a little bit, and that other story is also going to be a story. Does that make sense?
No, no, yeah. I think I would have pulled from like the Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind as far as
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
living in memories and them being a part of the narrative structure, in addition to like the regular core story. I just haven't seen Being John Malkovich. The movie always seemed really weird to me. I
It
think
is really weird.
I was always afraid to watch it. I'm like, oh, okay. Maybe I'll watch
It's
this other
really
thing.
weird.
Like I'll watch Predator for like the 18th time instead or something. I just I've never picked it up. But yeah, that's an interesting content. Is a very interesting way of telling a story. And I always liked, like, there's so many things I like about your writing style, in addition to like, oh, this is a fun adventure kind of story with cool characters and RPG mechanics. So we've talked a little bit about your writing influences, the things that you draw into it. What about like the game stuff? Like, what do you do? Like a ton of research about game mechanics, or you're just pulling from like the video games you've played in the past, and have those things been a big part of your life?
Yeah, yeah, man. I feel like I'd have been president if I played video games. But no, man. Video games, I think, are probably the best medium for art I think they have ever invented yet. Like, because it does. Cause I think to me, video games incorporate music, writing, movies, but then you give it an interactive portion, which just takes it all to another level. Like, I think that the video games are the best storytelling uh, medium out there. And
No,
ever since I
no, I absolutely agree. I can't agree with you more. I've thought that for years, and as the technology progresses of like making these fully 3D rendered worlds that are semi photorealistic, the amount of energy the game producers are putting into this only makes it better. I mean, you even if you go back to like Super Nintendo system, there's a story with Mario. He's gonna go save the princess. Then you go into Metroid, and there's an action element to it, but at the end of it, there's a huge plot twist. Samus reveals it's a girl, and everybody goes crazy. And then you go into like more recent stuff where like there's RPG mechanics, but there's also like RPG storytelling that you get with fantasy and sci-fi stories, where there are these like legitimately epic, interesting stories. Like you think of Witcher 3, or you think of I just finished God of War
oh yeah,
number
the new
4, and
one.
there's and yeah, the new one, the new God of War 4. And there's just like there's a huge amount of storytelling there, and it's like there's these huge, great cinematic scenes, but it's also about the relationship between a father and a son, and Kratos just kind of sucking as a dad, but still at least making the effort to try to impart whatever wisdom he's learned in life to his son and wanting him to be better. Like he says repeatedly to that story, like we should be better. and he's speaking from his own, past of like him murdering his dad. Spoilers, folks. Murdering the guy, murdering the whole pantheon, and then there are like huge revelations at the end. But it's a sweeping story. It's a legitimate work of art in which the audience is not a passive observer, but they're they're integral part of the storytelling. They're the character, they're the person who's moving the character forward in the story. And so that aspect of video games is just advanced, and more people are just putting the effort into making these great stories. And I think that's a lot of things we find incorporate into Little RPG, for me at least. Like we're pulling from those same things, only we're going kind of in reverse and making those game mechanics and making those storytelling opportunities part of our genre. And it's something that I love about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. This is such a unique genre because lit RPG, we love it because we love video games.
Right.
But I think it's really cool that we get to tell the story of these video games that most people will never get to play. Like a lot of people who don't game are never going to hear these stories. They don't get how video games like just really tell the best stories because you're the main character. You're in the story, and I love that. Whenever I read a book, I'm like, oh, am I the main guy? I put myself in there. That's what I do.
No. I mean, that's kind of the same reason I write in first person perspective instead of third, because that's how I play video games. I'm the character, and I think some like I have a couple of new editors, and apparently I'm driving them crazy because I write in first person present instead of like first person past or even like third person past, and they're like, this is weird. It hurts my brain. I'm like, sorry. But that's kind of the same perspective you get with video games.
Yeah, man. When I first read your book, I was like, I can't do this. Like, I'm like, what the heck? I was like, no, just keep reading it.
Yeah.
And then you like after it's like a switch has to go off in your head. Like you have to like flip a switch and be like, it's okay, because there's this like ingrained way we're taught to read, and like everything has to be like this, and we have to follow these rules and this structure, and I hate that. And so the way you write in first person, like it was really hard to get to at first, but now it's like, okay, I got it.
Yeah,
just because the tense thing, it's just what we were taught.
Yeah, I'm an amateur. I have no idea what I'm doing when I'm writing. I just tell a story, and some people bought it, but I know I absolutely get them, and I don't hold it against anybody who can't get past like the first pages of my novel because it's just written a certain way. I like to think the writing improved over time, but even if it hasn't, I'm like, I have a good time writing it, and I know people have a good time reading it sometimes, and that's all I ever expect. So I'm like, yeah, it's fun. So we have some stuff. Let's see. Any other influences to your writing that we haven't covered yet?
You know, I've read every famous fantasy author there ever is, was, and I can name them all, Neil Gaiman, Terry Pratchett, Robert Jordan, George R. R. Martin, J.K. Rowling, go through the plethora of them, but
Yeah, and
all of
speaking
them.
of JK, I was thinking like, oh, this Warrior Academy 3 is like, oh, is this like the Triwizard Tournament section of his Academy story? I thought that was interesting. I was like, is that going to be the case?
Did you finish it?
Yeah, I finished. I have a
Okay.
review already for it.
Okay. Kinda,
Yeah.
kinda.
I feel like the setup was at least that because you introduce like the other academies there. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, we're getting some. I expect to see like LaFleur any second, like waving around. Like, there was kind of a ninja moment where that was sort of happening. But is that where I mean, this is minor spoiler. Is that kind of where you're going with like part 2, sort of?
Yeah. My favorite anime is tournament anime. Like
Okay.
tournament stories are my favorite. Okay, my cat's going off. 1 second. Come on, cat. Sorry, he's a monster.
Well, I was gonna ask you about that too. Oh gosh, there's so many author questions. Like, is this the cat from I Am Gamer?
This is the cat from I Am Gamer.
Okay, yeah. I'll explain it to the audience. At the end of Warrior Academy of this one, there's a small like introduction to like a new series that I guess you're writing. And one of the things I thought was like, oh, the main character has this cat. He takes him on a motorcycle, and he's a monster. He's a beast. And I thought this seems a little too detailed to be a fake cat. He probably has a real cat, and this is it. So there you go.
I wish he would go running with me though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's he's the animus for that. But Warrior Academy, the tournament stuff. So Yu Yu Hakusho, have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen them all.
Yeah, okay, so all of those. Like the I think you did a review for Apollos the other day talking about his training
Hmm.
montages.
Yeah.
The training montage and the tournament fighting, like I just those are my two favorite things. Like you could do it with like well they do it. Like have you ever seen Food Wars?
Yeah, I love it. Good show. I mean, I mean that's the exact same stuff. I'm loving every single minute. I mean, when you say you love training montages and tournament style fight, I'm like, oh my god, it's like we're brothers. It's like we're the same mind. I'm looking at my anime list. I'm like, yeah, I have a bunch of stuff like Yu Yu Hakusho, Dragon Ball Z. I mean, Food Wars. I mean, there's Hajime no Ippo is one of my favorite versions of like training and like just the style of fighting. I mean, there's so many just like great influence of these stories, like in anime, especially. I think it's a really big thing, whether it's like Bleach or One Piece or whatever the case is, where there's training and tournament style stuff, and it's a really big influence for I think a lot of anime readers, which is why I also do very similar things in my own fight scenes. But I definitely recognize that influence in your latest novel.
Yeah, I just those are so much fun. Like the way the Japanese like their cultural like as long as you train really hard, you'll get good enough eventually.
Yeah.
Like I love that idea. I love it, and I want to use it in my book, so I do. Um, so Triwizard Tournament. That's something I'm working on, but I don't want
Right. Okay.
to. Yeah,
No, that's fine. I was just
but
curious. Yeah.
I think I referenced it in the book earlier. Like the seniors are out training for something.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like I have this idea. It's not spoilers, but for this like global kind of tournament that's going to happen between like everybody, but that's probably 3 books down the line,
Okay.
maybe 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. That's good. I just curious. I mean, that's definitely like an audience question that I had in my brain. I actually had a list of like things when I was like writing the notes for the review for your show. I'm like, SMH, what's this? Is this the Triwizard Tournament version of his story? And some silly things like that as far as like part of the review. But that just means I have a good time with it. It's entertaining, and I definitely see a lot of the influences that you pull from, which makes me like giggle like when I see a shinobi from the SNES Academy pop up. I'm like, okay, that's like a really tight super nerdy geek reference from like early video game history kind of stuff. So those are some of your influences as far as like writing goes. What is your actual structure for writing? Because that's part of what the show is, like helping everyone see, oh, not every writer is the same. I think we talked about your musical influences a little bit. Well, let's start with like, when you get an idea for a story, how does it go from there?
So currently, I'm writing about 8 different books right now.
Wow. I have
Yeah.
a hard time writing one at a time, I have to say.
Well, look, I've started 8 different books right now. I'm writing like one, but I'll get like an idea. I'm like, and it'll get so prevalent in my mind, I can't continue whatever story I'm working on. So I have to start writing on it. And so I write that until I get that bug out. Because
Right.
like, I don't know about you, but like I can't focus on like another story when something else is like weighing on me.
Right. Okay, I can get that.
So I just, as soon as something pops up and it's like to the point where it's stopping me from writing, like what I'm working on, I'm like, all right, let me see where this goes. So like that I Am Gamer was, I was halfway through episode 3 and I was just not going anywhere. Like,
Mhm.
you get just stuck. I was like, okay, I can't think of anything. Nothing sounds good. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun? What if I wrote a story about going back to when, before the Indians were decimated, and we'll make a little RPG out of it. That'll be fun. So I was
And
like, let me
that
see how this goes.
it sounds legitimately cool when I read that. I was like, is this where he's going with this? I'm like, we don't have any game stuff yet, but it was a little bit like, oh, this even without that though, it was like a really interesting premise. And I think that's one of the things I love about your story. Like you're more than willing to like go on those weird paths of like these weird premises or these weird ideas. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen any bird people who live in trees and like fight shark people anywhere else in any of the stories that I read. So I'm like, you're more than willing to like take these weird paths, and I genuinely love the weirdness about it because it's new and it's different, and that's always exciting for me. And so when I read I Am Gamer, I'm like, oh, this is potentially very, very cool. I'm kind of curious to see where you go with it. So like it was a good thing to me.
I just went to Florida recently, just a few weeks ago, and my dad and I were sitting down and we're talking about some stuff, and we started talking about the population of the world and how it's like 7 billion. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what was it 100 years ago? What was it 1,000 years ago? And I'm like, holy crap! And I started, finding all this stuff out. I'm like, how cool would that be to go back to where before, history that we know about, and then write a story about it.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
No,
So
no,
that's yeah.
I think that's the kind of the core of your writing style. It's fun, and that's what it is for you. And that funness may not always land with everybody, like every individual, but for the people it does, like it really hits. Like they can feel how much fun you're having writing this story, even if it's like not necessary for them, but it's like for your own enjoyment. I think that's an appealing part of like your brand and like your writing style.
Yeah, this is gonna take like a little bit of a serious twist. But like, when I was a kid, like my parents divorced, and like I grew up in Florida, but like it was mostly like I was pretty much minority. I don't know how you grew up, but like so books, video games, movies, that's where I went to for escapism.
All
And
right.
so like when I read, uh, watch movies, it's all like stuff that I want for fun. Like I want to feel good, I want to enjoy it. So that's kind of like when I write, I'm like, I want to have fun. I don't want anybody to be like, man, game's really depressing. I don't want to make anybody like, I want to be like, man, this is a really fun story. I had a really good time and I feel good about myself. That's my whole goal. Is just that's a fun time, you know?
Cool. No, no, that's nice. I am curious about the setup for the main character in I'm Gamer. Did that really happen to anybody that you know of? Or is that just like, oh, this is just an arc? Oh, it did. Okay. Okay, never mind.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
man. That happened to yeah. That's that was one of those really scenes that like I don't know if you've had that's like really easy to write.
No, no, yeah. That felt like that felt like a painful memory. I was like, I have those in my own stories. And like, okay, I kind of recognize, oh, that's I wonder if this really happened because that would be kind of sad, but also like it resonates as genuine. You know what I mean? Like people who experience like, oh yeah, yeah, that's not awesome. That to me, that's a way of connecting to the reader because even if they've never experienced it themselves, they can recognize, oh, these emotional tones, these descriptions feel real, and that allows them to take a step into your character's shoes and go on them with that journey when they can have that connection to that character.
Yeah, I think I found the easiest things for me to write like before I started publishing were what happened to me, and that was the main thing I didn't want other people to read. So like the easiest thing to write and the only thing I don't want to show anybody else.
Yeah, no, no, I hear what you're saying.
But now it's like, well, if you write what you know, the scenes just come out so much better.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like a double-edged sword. Like, man, this is a really good scene. And I really that's easy. I got that can down, but like, man, that's pretty emotional. Oh, yeah, I remember that. That kind of sucked.
No, no. I mean, I think, I mean, for me at least, like writing the most emotional scenes in the stories that I've written have almost been cathartic in a way of like dealing with pain because you're putting it on a page and other people are connecting to it, and so you realize you're not alone, and that there's this commonality among readers and mankind of all these like things that we all go through. And even though we feel alone and we feel hurt by them, that other people out there who've experienced the same thing and they've survived and they've lived through and they become better people. And it's become a part of who they are and made them better or worse, whatever the case is. But it's part of their history, and those notes and those stories connect people together, and that's what creates societies, that's what creates families, is those shared experiences, those shared stories, and those shared moments. And when you write a story and you even if it's fictionalized and exaggerated or minimized, whatever it is, when you're passing along those bits of your soul, and that's a fancy way, but you're creating a family with your reader. You're creating that shared bond and experience. And I think that's what draws a lot of our audience together. But it is very much different than the over the top anime fight scenes. And I think there are places for both, but they definitely have different purposes in our stories. And I think when I read I Am Gamer, that was the thing that resonated with me most. Like, oh, this was a little more real. This was a little more connective to someone's personal history, as opposed to, I mean, there's still the moments in Warrior Academy, but like you said, you definitely pushed like this pop culture anime over the top kind of vibe to it. And I think I Am Gamer, even just that first scene, that first couple chapters, I was like, oh, this is connecting a lot with me and being Hispanic, me having a lot of the same cultural influences you do as far as that goes. And I'm like, oh, I'm genuinely excited about seeing the next chapter or reading this story. You know what I mean?
That's good because I wasn't sure about it. Thank you. But yeah, man, uh, I didn't to elaborate on your point. Like I didn't realize, like when you write stuff down, you don't think like I should share it with people, but you are bearing a part of your soul, and you are connecting with all these readers who, when they genuinely like your stuff,
Mhm.
you find somebody that's connecting with you, and it's definitely such a great feeling to put those emotions out and then have somebody connect with it and feel like they're a part of it. Really, it's pretty awesome. I don't know
Yeah,
how
it
that.
is it's an interesting feeling when you get those letters from readers, or you get those comments on wherever saying this this made me cry, or this made my day better, or like I think the most touching was like, my husband's in the military and you helped him get through some really bad days because your stories were interesting, and they just made things better for him. I'm like, thank you so much. And that kind of stuff is really nice too.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's just it's so humbling, I guess. Humbling. It's just so cool when people reach out and they're like, "Hey, I like your stuff." It just makes you feel so good. It
Yeah,
makes
it does.
it just makes it all. I don't know. It just makes it cool. It just
It
makes it
makes it
worth
worth
it.
it. If they didn't pay you money, that would be the next best thing.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm
But please
being,
pay me money. Please pay me money.
yeah, money is important too, though, because we have bills. So
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Oh,
Um,
how are you doing, man? You working your stuff out? I know that you were talking about it on.
oh, you mean the Amazon stuff?
Yeah. Is that working
Yeah.
out at all?
Oh, I sent them a letter saying, "Oh, I'm withdrawing from Katie, Kindle Unlimited." They sent me back a form letter saying, "Oh, we reviewed your thing, but we're still going to say that these are not valid, and so we're going to take them." It was an automated letter, so I'm like,
Oh,
"Oh, okay. You're not actually reading these responses, or maybe that's just that branch of that particular thing, because it was ruined for content Kindle Unlimited review or whatever it was." So I sent another email to I want to say customer service or something. It was like on the KDP account,
mm,
under like, oh, contact us, and a bunch of like subs things saying other. So maybe they'll get back to me at that point about that particular thing. But my plan is basically to withdraw from Kindle Unlimited, just because I'm only going to make like $400 now in 2 months
yeah,
because of it, and it
yeah,
should be several thousand.
yeah,
They canceled all like all the Kindle Unlimited reads that I had, so I was like, oh, that sucks. Um,
dude.
it is what it is. I can't change it, but it's also like I'm not responsible for the bad things that people did. Even if that's the case, it's still kind of an issue whether or not the algorithms from Amazon are actually detecting bad actors doing inflated page counts, or if it's just, oh, we have a lot of Kindle Unlimited readers who are voracious and they spike out a lot. Like when they get into it, they'll read everything you have
Mhm.
in like an entire series, and maybe that's what they're picking up. It's really kind of unclear as far as like the community goes. But yeah, I mean, thankfully my situation is that my wife works, so we have a second source of income. But like I can imagine for other authors who are like, this is it,
Mhm.
if that happened to them, that would be potentially devastating for some authors. So it is what it is. But yeah, thanks for asking.
No worries, man. I like you. So I don't want anything bad to happen. I mean, I don't like you, but you know what
It's
I
okay.
mean.
If you did like me, I'd be like,
No,
oh, thanks, man.
wait, your wife is gonna watch this, and so is my girlfriend. So.
It's okay. We can,
um,
yeah,
yeah, it's
we can
cool.
be, what is it called? Heterosexual bromance or something? Figure
Yeah, right. Have you heard of these new gender, the new gender identity for males, for straight males? For
I don't,
heterosexual male, now it's called a cisgender male. That's
is that
a
what that
yeah,
word
cisgender.
is?
Yeah.
I
I was
think
like,
I've heard
oh,
it before. I'm like, oh, I don't know what this word is. But I'm like, you be as long as you're happy and everyone's consensual. I don't really care what these labels are. We're just all people.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
I'm like,
That's what
okay,
it is. Everybody's got to have something to get angry about.
yeah, that's a thing. Okay, but going back to a little bit on the writing, what kind of writer are you? Pantser, outliner, something in between?
So I'm mostly a pantser. With any book one, I'm a pantser, and then in book two, I found and book and anything beyond that, you have to be a multiple or a combination. There's just it's just too hard to keep track of everything that you have going on and to go somewhere else. So like writing multiples in a series has made me a combination pantser outliner.
Okay, perfect. So you do a little more like free flowing thought with the book one, and then you start incorporating outlines and kind of a little more structure. Because again, you're absolutely right. If you're going to plan this long term 13 book series like you are with Heroes Academy, if you don't have a plan, it feels very wonky. It feels. I mean, and that's okay. Slice of life is fine with me personally. Like I can go on an adventure and kind of discover it with the character. But if you're planning for like a long term thing, like I see how outlining would be much more beneficial. And that's kind of what I do it too. So yeah, I understand that. So what about easiest and hardest thing about writing for you?
Um, the easiest thing about writing is coming up with the ideas. Like coming up with what I want to write, like, oh, this is going to be fun. And that sounds great. That's the easiest.
Mm,
The hardest is not thinking it sucks when I write it. I don't like it gets better every day. Every time I write, I get a little better at it, but I'm still like, this is crap. This is crap. This is crap. This is crap. Like I got to rewrite that sentence. I got to rewrite that sentence. And like, I guess self confidence isn't the right word because I'm confident I can write well. It's I'm a writer and I can't think of the word.
no, that's fine. I see what you're saying as far as like your criticism of yourself. Um, you feel like sometimes it's overblown, like it's not quite necessary. But I also think I think, well, if you think your writing is not good, then you're always striving to improve. You're always striving to make that sentence, that paragraph better. And as long as that doesn't get out of hand, in that it prevents you from producing, finishing a novel, I don't necessarily see that as being a negative unless you make it or unless it gets to be a negative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a negative for a long time, and then I was like, well, how can I use this to help me write better? And
Right.
so now I'm like, okay, think about things realistically instead of just being emotional about it. Be like, oh yeah, my stuff sucks. No, look at it, read
Okay.
it, and be like, oh okay. Try to be um, a bit more realistic about it, and that's helped. So finding that balance between all my stuff sucks and it's going to be okay is the hardest thing, and that's what I've kind of found.
Okay. Well, I think that's a fair statement. Let's see what else we have. Oh, writer's
Mm.
block. You ever get
Wait,
writer's block? Oh,
one of
sure.
the worst, one of the things really hard is not to like find people who write bad reviews on Facebook and stalk them and like send messages and be like, "Oh, I live by you."
Oh, I should
No, I'm
go
kidding.
visit. Yeah,
I'm
no,
kidding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's why I don't give my address. To be honest, because I review a lot of stuff and not all of it's great reviews. And I think I know I've hurt some people's feelings, and that's unfortunate. I at the same time I'm like I've try to give an honest opinion about your story and be detailed about like the specific things. So it's not just like I hate your stuff. I hope you're burning in hell. It's these are the things I didn't like and this is why. But I understand that point of view as both an author and as like a reviewer. I'm like, oh, sorry, don't come at me.
It's not the reviews that are like, oh, I didn't like these things about it. I get that. Like, oh, hey, this is fine. Obviously, the things I write aren't for everybody, and
Right.
we all have taste. It's the ones that are like mean that like if you saw me in person and you said that to me, you wouldn't say that because you'd get hit in the face. Like it's those reviews. I'm like, man, that's just not nice. Because I don't know, I'm a pretty nice person. As I punch you in the face.
Yeah, I get that. Okay, that's fair. See, writer's block. Writer's block. You ever get writer's block, and if so, how do you get past it?
Well, earlier I was talking about like, I wrote different stories. That doesn't usually work though. So, a lot of times I don't have anything going on. Just can't write. Just like nothing's flowing.
Mm.
Um, I smoke and I go for a run. Like I know that sounds silly, but
No.
like it helps me really like just like I think what writer's block is to me is like I'm thinking too hard about things, and I can't get a coherent thought through. So when I go for a run, my exercise, my mind clears out. I feel a lot better. I come back, and I usually always have cleared out and have like new ideas going. So that's my trick.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That works. If what works for you, that's the important part. I always actually ask the question because everybody deals with it differently. Everybody deals with stress and frustrations in their own way. And so when we get a bunch of like different answers, it's like, oh, okay, maybe it helps somebody. Because I've heard that from a lot from like other authors, like, oh, I really like your author interview series because I get an insight into how somebody else works, and I picked up different points about like, oh, he does it this way. I think that might work for me. And so if smoking and going for running, doing exercise really does help you, like I think that's valid, and it's going to work for somebody else. I can guarantee you that somebody's right now watching this frustrated, I can't get past this point, and they're like, oh, but I like to exercise, and maybe that'll do it for me.
Well, even just exercising, man, it really helps because if you push yourself really hard, you don't have time to think about anything else. When you're exhausted, like you can't, oh yeah, oh yeah, Hero's gonna do this. No, you're just like, I'm so tired. And then you get back and have some water and like, oh yeah, idea pops up. Great. But that's just, that's me. So
Yeah, well, it works for you, works for somebody else.
what do you do?
Me, I don't, I have to like separate my mind from my work for a little while. Like I got stuck on Adventures in Terror book number 2. No, on the one I'm writing, Adventures in Terror book number 3. I started it a year ago. I started writing the beginning portion of it like a year ago, and then I got stuck, and I had to end up writing something entirely different to me, which was Project Alpha, which is Adventure Terror is very fantasy. Project Alpha is set in the modern world. It's a world load RPG. Main character has the game powers, but it's set a little more sci-fi than fantasy. And I had to write that entire novel before my brain could reset and go back to a fresh perspective on, go back to Adventure Book 3, and I'm only now like finished it like a year later in the first draft. For me, that's what I kind of have got to stop writing, go cleanse my palate, maybe refresh my creative juices by go watching a movie or some anime or reading some other novels, which I do on a regular basis anyways. But that's what works for me personally. I'm not an exercise guy. These chubby cheeks don't come from like running for miles and miles. But it's different for everybody. Sometimes like calming my nerves means playing a chill video game. Right now I'm playing Mech Warrior Battle something. But it's very chill. It's like a turn-based strategy game, and there's this music, and there's no narrative structure in like the mech fights. And it's like very relaxing, and it clears my mind because I think strategically about the fight, which means I'm not thinking about this, character or this like plot point that I can't quite figure out. And so, that's how I clear my combos sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you. It's just getting your mind clear.
Yeah, and then
Getting your mind clear.
and I think yeah, like I love hearing how people do it. I mean, how all authors do it. Like these interviews for me are all as fun as they are, hopefully, for the viewers, because I'm genuinely interested in what works for you, man, and like what does it? Because I love learning about writing in the process from other authors as much as I do reading their works, because it's fun to connect with you on this level, because I've already connected with you in my mind, at least through your works, through the parts of you that you've put on those pages. So this is fun for me. Okay. So we did that one. Oh, publishing stuff. You self-publish. Why did you choose self-publish instead of going with traditional publishing or something else?
Well, I mean, I'll level with you. I didn't know if I could self-publish. I mean, go traditional. I didn't know if I could. I didn't know if they would like my stuff, and I was like, do I want to send this book out to 150 different editors or companies and have them all say no? Yeah, that would make me feel really good. So I was like, let me self-publish through Amazon. It's free. What's the worst thing that happens? People don't like my book. Oh, no. Then I figure out something else and start again. It didn't cost me any money. It just cost me time and my pride and, emotional state. But other than that, it's free. So self-publishing. And from it took a long time to get, it took a year and 5 months to get to the point where I'm at now, to where I can make enough income doing it but I don't think I would have gotten traditionally published in this amount of time. I think it would have taken longer, you know. And you don't own the rights to your stuff.
Right. Somebody else kind of owns it, and you just
And
they're like paying you a little bit of money to get you through or something. I'm like, yeah, that was always weird to me. Like the traditional model for publishing, in this day and age, just I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. At least for someone in my situation, I'm like, I know I'm not gonna have like a huge J.K. Rowling audience or Stephen King audience. I don't need the big massive marketing arm of a traditional publisher. Like I talk to the audience on a regular basis for this community. I interact with them on a daily basis on Facebook and Twitter and other places. So it's like it didn't make sense to me to do traditional publishing from any standpoint. Like, why am I giving them like 90% of the money when I'm doing 100% of the writing when I don't have to? Like, I understand it works better for some people, and I'm not criticizing them, but for me, I'm like, I'm okay with doing the work and doing marketing and doing my own editing or hiring editors or hiring a cover artist or whatever the case is and hiring an audiobook artist to do the audiobook version of it. So why shouldn't I keep most of the money if I can?
well, not only that, like the other part is I have 100% control of everything I do.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah, I don't know that stoner little RPG comedy is gonna go over well, with the big name publishers.
exactly. It's like not only that, but like the musical aspect, like it's all really different. So I'm like, it's not something that's traditional in its own way. So why would I go with somebody who doesn't really understand what I'm doing? Because I've
Yeah,
talked to people. I have some friends that are in publishing and friends that have written books, and they're like, "Oh, I don't get it. What are you doing?" And it's like, well, you know what? It's not for you. So yeah, so it's just more fun too. Like I, I make all my covers. They're not the best, but they're mine.
mhm.
All this everything is mine. That's kind of it's like it's all mine. Nobody else has any part of it.
Right. No,
Amazon owns them for a few months, but if I don't want them to, I get it back.
no, man, that's
So
absolutely right. And I think that's one of the things that going traditional publisher is different about, and that the people who are paying you money, as far as like an advance, have a lot of influence in what you're going to write. Like you're giving it some control of your story. I've talked to a number of like authors in our community who are doing traditional publishing, and they're like, no, my editor told me I had to take out this game stuff, or I had to take out this language or this character or this like bias, whatever it is, because they feel like they're marketing towards a particular audience, and that's not their brand, or they don't understand the game thing entirely, and so they want to make it super light because they think that it'll appeal to more people. And I'm like, those are all things. I don't know that it's going to make your novel any better in this subgenre. And I definitely know that the author is like, oh, they would rather do it a different way, but someone's giving you money and and they kind of own the rights to it. They ultimately have like a really big stake in what you're going to be doing.
but it's not only that too, but like my main goal for writing is to be self-sufficient, is to
Right.
be support of myself and not have to work for somebody else. And when you take a publisher and they give you that check, they now own you. You work for somebody, and like that sucks. I quit working for people because I don't want to, and I don't want
No,
to. I don't want to give somebody my IP that I've worked my ass off on. That like means more to me than any other job I've ever done, and have them control it and tell me what it's supposed to be like. No, I don't like that. Now, if you offer me $1 million, I might change my mind. But for now,
yeah, you
for
offer me some of that
now,
J.K. Rowling money, I'll be like, yeah, sure, you do whatever you want with this character. You want to murder him? Oh, sure, I don't care.
I mean, once you hit like seven figures, I guess all of your, you know, uh, uh, morals go out the window.
They shift. They definitely do. It's like,
Yeah.
oh well, I can live most of my life in this. Yeah, I don't have to. I don't have to do a thing. I'm cool with this. I'm fine. Yeah, yeah. So I'm like, I'm looking at that. I don't know if the J.K. Rowling is super excited to see like Harry Potter on people's phones. But again, like she'll just cash that paycheck.
Did you see that thing they had in the news a while back? They're talking about this movie that came out in the '80s that that J.K. Rowling, they say, loosely based Harry Potter on.
Oh no, I don't think I did read that. I mean, but
It's
we have
that
influence. We have
movie.
so many influences.
No, but there's a movie and the boy's name is like Potter. His last name's Potter, and like he goes to like a magic school and he has like all this like it's just I gotta find that and send it to you sometime. You're gonna be like, really? But it's still different enough that it's not the same thing, but it's kind of
Right.
interesting.
No, no.
So
I absolutely admit I pull a lot of ideas from other stories and other movies and other artists. I make them original. I'm not plagiarizing in any way, shape, or form, at least to me. But I definitely like pull like things like my kung fu scenes in Vegetable Too. Like, oh yeah, I was watching Drunken Master when I wrote this, and so that's why this is this way. But I always recognize, oh, there's a fine line between being influenced and just copy and paste. There's a really big difference. Definitely go with influence instead of plagiarizing.
Oh yeah, completely. What was I doing with that? Um, when I was in school, right there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Can you see me?
so when I was in school, I remember my creative writing teacher. She was like, "Every story that you've ever heard or written has been told before,"
Right.
and it's true. Like every story is a basis on some other story. There's like 6 or 7 tropes that's every story. Like there's a hero's journey, which is the rip on mine. Which is Star Wars and Gilgamesh, everything, and then there's like the Oedipus, which is the hate your mom and father. Like all the stories have been done. They're just different versions of them. And as long as you're not like ripping people's stuff off, I think it's, yeah, they're going to influence you, obviously.
Yeah, and that's part of life. Like you influence someone else, they influence you. Nothing's really original, but that's okay as long as everyone understands that nothing's original. I think it's okay. I mean, don't name your main character Mickey Mouse. But other than that,
Yeah.
feel free to use a mouse-like character.
It just like have a little wall there. Hey, I respect your work. I'm not stealing it, but I really like it.
Yeah. I mean, we all do. Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see a little bit on the technical side. What about like marketing and review stuff? Do you do any of that at all?
Man, this is the hardest. I think for any aspiring writer, this is the hardest part of it. This is the
It's
hardest.
kind of a business question, almost.
It is. I was so anti-social media before I published. Like, I may have been on Facebook like 3 times a year. I just wasn't. I just wasn't on media. But now, like, I have to be on social media all the time, and you have to answer everything you can. You have to talk to as many people as you can. It's just, I think it's the biggest thing I hate about writing, but it's also one of the coolest things. I never knew about it because I met a lot of really cool people. But I think the social media aspect and the marketing is just, that's the job part. Like, that's your work part. You have to be on social media all the time. You have to answer everybody's posts. You have to be engaged. You have to do all these things. Otherwise, people aren't going to read your stuff. As simple as that. Like, you have to.
Yeah, and you're making yourself a part of a community as opposed to just like saying, "Oh, here's the thing for you to do." It's like, oh, when you make yourself part of me, they're more likely to say, "Oh yeah, that's Gabriel, my friend from online, or someone I'm familiar with." So they're more likely to take a chance on your thing. But at the same time, they're also like, "Oh, if you need help, you need cover artists, you need to bounce story ideas off of each other." Like some of the best people I've met in the community are like other authors I would have never have like been able to connect to if it wasn't for like the Facebook groups or like Twitter groups or Reddit or wherever. And for me, I've been such an online geek for my entire life. Like that aspect of it felt so natural to me. The people I've met online and in video games have always been like more real than some of my non-friends in the real world. But I understand that people are different, and I was just curious. Like, see, it feels like the computer online stuff has been harder for you, just in general. And like, okay, that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, like my like gaming buddies and stuff like that. That's never been a thing, because like I think of those people as like my friends.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I had never had to be so involved online, like
right.
in the social media communities. Like I have a Twitter account, but never used it. I have, I have a
no. You seem like you're. It feels like you're more grounded on your daily life, like in the real world. Like you, I mean, this is totally just like you feel like I think that you'd rather meet somebody and talk to them than like talk to them online in a chat room. You know what I mean? It feels like that could be because a lot of what you told me about is like, oh, all these different sensory inputs are what make up your life, whether it's like the music that you're feeling connecting to emotionally, or the keyboard, and like you see the physical papers on the walls. I'm like, oh, this guy is definitely he's a little more physically grounded than digitally incorporated. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat to me, at least.
Yeah, I am, but you have to find that balance. And
Yeah.
now it's leaning towards more. I'm getting better at the digital part, but like I think I told you earlier, I was a bartender for a long time. So like I love talking to people and like interacting, but then only when I want to. But so in online it's different though, because online you have to interact with everybody, but you have to. It's not when you want to, like you got to.
See, for me, it's different. It's like the online talking and chatting and like the typing of the keyboards. It's so much easier for a social. I mean, I'm not particularly socially adept outside of like this space. You know what I mean? On a one-on-one conversation, I'm pretty decent, but like in a group, I'm super shy. I'm like I don't talk and I feel super uncomfortable. In group settings, it's very challenging for me personally, and so the anonymity of an online persona, or like, oh, just like I'm a picture on a page and so are they. It's so much easier for me in my mind to like, oh, being free in my talking, because there's really no consequence of like not you don't see these disapproving scowl, or them not understanding the nerdy things you're talking about. And there's in some ways it's just easier because it's stuff from your brain going in a page instead of having to understand emotional cues and facial recognition and just all those million other stimuli that you get with real life things. I mean, I'm better at it now than was when I was a teen, but that's definitely the case for like, oh, why online stuff is better, easier for some people. It feels like you coming from the opposite spectrum of like, you love the extra stimuli of the emotional connotations of a glance, and it might be missing from the online realm from you in that respect.
You know what? That's like nail right on the head. Like I can tell, I can have a conversation in person with something. Like this is a lot easier for me than
Yeah,
just talking on Discord or
yeah,
typing. Like
I
I
love
can
this
see
more than
you and
anything.
stuff. Yeah, like and I'm just good. Like I like to read facial cues. I like to see body language. I like physical presence. Like when I'm online, I write a sentence. I'm like do type it out, and it sounds like I'm saying screw you, but I'm not. I'm like, oh crap, that didn't come out right. So like when I type and I can't like I don't have the same ability to read the situation, I guess is kind of what I'm saying. So like I'm not as tactful on writing. And I've seen it in, like in chat rooms. Like somebody will post something, I'll make a joke, and like people blow up on me. I'm like, well, I was just kidding. I was just kidding. It was a joke, you
And I'm
know?
like, I read his stuff, so I get what he's saying. But like, oh no, that's not going to go well.
Exactly. So I don't have that like I haven't been in the chat rooms long enough, or like I haven't done it so seriously that like I realize the things I shouldn't say.
Right.
And that's what I'm learning in this curve is like if you don't know what the hell you're saying, Gabe, just don't say anything. I mean, it's just oh man. So that's cool. I'm learning that. I'm getting better at that and not sounding like a total jerk on the chat rooms now. I'm finally like I think daily I get a little better.
No, that's like it's another skill set to learn. And again, it for me, I've been a part of like the online community for since I was a teenager. I started with America Online, doing chats there and just like talking to people, and that was my community because again, super socially awkward teenager into like adulthood, especially toward adulthood, and it's just I had to learn from books the things you probably took naturally. As far as like reading body language, talking to girls and talking to people. It was a very different structure for me, and that's just different person, different mindset. And I think that resonates with a lot of the online community. Like, oh yeah, a lot of us are really awkward in that respect, but we have that commonality as well, and so that forms the foundation of a community. Those things you have in common. So like, I definitely I understand what you're saying. For me, it's just the opposite direction. Like real human interaction was always harder for me. So but I do understand the frustration of like, oh, not having all the cues you're used to like using. So like this is why I do this though, because for me it's I don't get as much from a voice as I do from seeing you. Like I've gotten better at like recognizing when people are bored or when they're enthusiastic or when they're uncomfortable. But it really was like me reading books. So like, oh, so that's what that face means. She wasn't interested at all. Uh, she was giving the subtle signal of like, go away. You're bothering me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean, man. It's the same stuff, just different execution. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, I one thing I really love that I didn't expect to find was this. Like, I really like this community a lot. Like, I don't know everybody, but the interactions that I do have with most of the writers is really good. Like, I don't know. It's such a really tight knit, caring community. Like I was surprised because none of us really knew each other, but now everybody's just so welcoming and they're so helpful. And I just think it's great. So that's one thing. If you're an aspiring author, get on the Facebook groups. Don't be a dick. Get on Facebook groups. Be nice.
No, I absolutely agree. And that's one of the things that drew me towards this. Oh, look, we got someone in chat room. Look at that.
What?
Lazarinth, sup, Gabe. I'm assuming that's someone you know.
Hey.
So there you go. So I'm super excited. It's like the end of the thing. We already have like a couple of viewers. It looks like we have 3 whole viewers right now. So that's always good.
That's awesome. 3 views is
yeah,
better
yeah.
than
I mean, considering that I talked about it like 10 minutes before we started, that's really good. It really is. Like I kind of forgot to like, oh, we scheduled this like last week. I'm like, oh wait, I forgot to mention anything. This is fun. People are going to watch it later on and they're like, oh, that was a very interesting conversation you guys had. But yeah, the community is really fun. I think that's one of the things that keeps me here the most and keeps me so passionate about like reading and talking in the communities, that everybody's enthusiastic about the genre. Everybody's enthusiastic about supporting each other. And I think it goes back to like, we have a lot of common experiences that helped form a community. We love video games. We love anime. We love RPG mechanics. We love RPG games. We love good storytelling. And from the author side, it's like a lot of us are coming from the same place of like, oh, we're new with this, or we've been new with this at some point in our lives, and we all kind of understand like the struggles of being creative and like putting something out there and having people judge it, and having to learn all these different skill sets of like, oh, I have to find an editor, or I have to hire a cover artist, or I have to learn how to do better, sentence structure, or whatever it is, or it's like story outlining, or just telling a good story. Like, and so we have that coming out of like of this community, and it works really well because, again, a lot of us are socially awkward in real life, but online we're like, oh yeah, we're happy to be helpful and communicative.
I've been I don't know if this blah 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 blah. So since you started working from home, like I have just deep dived into the internet and like just search everything that I want to know about everything all the time, and I'm just inundated with so much information that I think it's too much. So like I'm on this like the tribal kick thing. Have you been hearing about that? How everybody's like getting all tribal, and you only have about 70 or 80 people you can actually like, consider your tribe mates and stuff. So I'm like, man, this lit RPG community, this writers group is like, it's like a tribe. It's like a team. We're all like have the same interests. We all have pretty much the same goals, and we all like the same stuff. Like it's crazy because you would never be able to find this many people that have the same interests and just basically all the same things that you like in ever. Never. Yeah. Maybe one person, maybe two. But like,
I absolutely agree. I think the confluence of Kindle being an online platform with a bunch of like other online aspects of it, like whether it's Facebook or Twitter or other social media platforms, that weird conflicts of those particular concepts and aptitudes and devices are the only thing that really allows us, this particular community, to really thrive. If any one of those things didn't exist, it would be much harder to find your group, to find your people in this respect. And looks like online Lazarinth is Christopher Keene. So there you go. Mystery solved. Hey man. So thanks for joining us in chat, even though we're kind of finished. We're running this stuff to talk about, but yeah, like I said, it's a good community. I really do love it, and it's a big part of my life personally. So I'm happy that it's so close, and we're not a dysfunctional family.
Yeah. Whenever I see everybody fight, I'm like, oh, mommy's hitting daddy,
Yeah, we definitely try to keep that from the readers because they don't know any better. They don't need to know that. The few little spats we have occasionally.
Yeah, shut the door. Go fight in the bedroom.
Okay, kids, you're going to grandma's real quick while me and mommy have a discussion. No, it is what it is. I mean, no family's perfect, and I recognize that as well. Like no real life family. Every family has drama and issues, and that's a part of like being human. But accepting that and knowing that you can go past that is also an important part of being, a functioning member of a community.
Yeah. And I think everybody does a pretty good job at that, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody does a pretty good job at that.
Yeah. Okay, so we're kind of at the end. I don't have any more questions to read out because I usually have the audience questions, but I forgot to gather them. But it's really fun here. So I think we've had a really good time. Already been like an hour and a half that we've been talking. So I'm good. Was there anything else you want to talk about?
So there's one thing I want to talk about.
Sure.
So I've been getting like a lot of flack in my books because I don't know if you've noticed, but I changed the cuss words out.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I knew that was going to be an issue because it feels a little political.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can see like it is political to the point of like they're just cuss words. Like, so I've been getting a lot of like bad reviews about people like, oh, you hate this, they hate that. I'm like, no, man, no. So for anybody who is watching this and is like, oh, you're such a so and so, no, man, it's because it's ridiculous that everybody's so crazy, and both words are used as swear words. So I understand that you're upset, everybody, but don't be. It's
Yeah,
just a
no,
joke.
and no,
Relax.
and in context of like the story, it makes absolute sense because this is set. I'm around like thousands of years into the future after the big cataclysm, when everything we know now is gone, and people are just picking up the little pieces that they can and incorporating it into like their future culture. Which is why you have somebody who's like referencing Bleach with their power move. It's not because they love the anime. They probably never actually watched it, but that's the cultural story that came from their past after the apocalypse. And
It's
so
just
for me, I'm like recognizing, oh, these are just he's kind of saying something, but it's not like as political as people think it's going to be.
not.
They're just words.
Yeah, it's not. I just want people to like relax
Yeah,
a little bit. It's not a statement on policy. I'm not telling you who anything is.
yeah,
Just relax. It's a joke. It's jokes. They're
yeah.
jokes. Yeah.
That's all. That's all. A lot of your stories are basically like, I'm just saying a thing. I don't
Yeah.
mean too much by it. I'm just trying to be fun.
Yeah. Just
Sorry.
have some fun. Have some
Yeah,
fun with it. It's not
that's all.
there's nothing serious about any of the books I've written. And if you take any of them seriously, you're probably missing the point.
Yeah. Most of these literature stories aren't
Yeah.
that serious. They're just for fun. They're adventure stories for the most part, and
Yeah.
have a good time with them. And if you happen to pick up something that means something to you, great.
Yes.
The author doesn't necessarily mean it, but if it matters to you, that is bonus. Those are
Yeah.
bonus points. We got one question from the audience. Lazarus, I think he gave us a pity question. He's like, have you ever done any martial arts?
Yes. When I was younger, I was in Aikido and Taekwondo. And then when I figured out that girls don't care if you're in martial arts, I stopped. So
There we go.
about 14.
There you go. So that's about the time kids are like, oh, I'm not getting any attention from the ladies because I'm into chess. Oh, well then I'll just stop. Yeah.
Yeah. What do I do that makes women like you? Oh, okay. Let's do that.
Let's do
Yeah,
that.
so,
Musicians.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like that. That's like the number one reason most guys get into music is like, oh, the girls. Yeah.
Oh, dude, 100%. 100%. I would say like 75% of everybody who thinks they play guitar just so they could get a girl.
And it works, which is why it keeps happening.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I don't know why.
There you go. Okay, I think that's kind of it.
Dude, this was so much fun, man.
Yeah, it was really fun. Remember that folks who are watching, you can always catch all of Gabriel's stuff. He has an Amazon page, author page, Facebook. He's on Twitter. He has we'll have links in the show notes for his Goodread page for Earth Online and Warrior Academy series. All there if you want to go check out the show notes for this particular episode of the podcast. So thanks everybody for hanging out. And Gabriel, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to just have this great conversation about all these amazing things and some very interesting things as well. Like looking back in this podcast, like, oh, we went off script big time, but it was still fun.
Dude, it was a good time, man. I think that's what I wanted, just to have a conversation, man. It's great to get to know you because I read all your stuff and we interact in the chats and stuff. But this is cool, man. I had a really good time. It's fun.
Yeah, it was definitely fun for me too. So thanks a lot for again, just taking the time because I know you're busy. You actually have apparently 8 or 9 different projects going on at the same time. And again, I always want to thank you for just like being you, because like I said, one of the things I love about your work is that it is so different. I recognize that you're a different kind of person than I am, and I love that that's the case because it gives me an opportunity to see the world differently, whether it's from the musical side of like you incorporating theme music into your stories, or whether it's from the cultural difference, like, oh, you're definitely more in the pop culture. And that's not something I've necessarily been a part of, but I've always been curious or interested about, or whether it's, just the way you incorporate different aspects of your life. Like one thing I love about The Gamer or I Am Gamer, it was that, oh, this this in part is his life, and I get to go on, I get to learn about you, and I get to experience some of your woes, but also some of your exaltations in these stories a little bit at a time. And I recognize, oh, he's different than me, but that's good. It makes me a better person when I can see the world differently, and it gives me a broader experience on life that I'll admit I haven't had. And I look forward to reading all of your stuff because of that, because I'm like, oh, this is like I get to hang out with the cool kid at school, or I get to hang out with somebody else that I in my normal life wouldn't have been able to necessarily meet. You know what I mean? And so thank you so much for your writings, and for just being different and being willing to explore kind of the weirder sides of life, or these weird stories, because they are genuinely a highlight of my week when I get a chance to, like, oh, Gabriel's latest stuff came out. That's awesome. Like, I get to listen to the music and or read some neat little story. So thanks, man.
That was so nice, man. I appreciate that. That is one of the nicest things that I think anybody's ever said about my writing. And I don't want to sound like, cheesy, but thanks a lot. It means a lot that you like my stuff, because I really respect your opinion, because I think you go out of your way to give everybody your real opinion, and you don't just fluff up stuff. Like, if we were friends and you read my stuff, you would still be like, hey, like, I meant like if we had known each other for like 20 years or something.
Yeah.
And you would still be honest with me. And like, I can't tell you how, I'm sure you would know, but how helpful it is to have that like constructive criticism. And then from somebody who actually like enjoys reading my stuff and can still say, hey, this is bad about it. Like, there's nothing better than that, man. And I appreciate it. I really do, a lot. And it's really great to be on here, and thanks for telling that to me, man. It was really nice. It was really nice.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being nice about my nice stuff. Okay, that's it, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to say goodbye to everybody, we'll end the broadcast, and we'll probably chat a little bit afterwards. But thanks, everybody, for hanging out. So if you want to say goodbye to everybody.
All right, everybody, thank you so much. Check out Warrior Academy. And if you're of age, check out Earth Online. I don't think I talked about it that much, but it's just stoner comedy. So if you like stoner stuff, you'll like it. If you don't like stoner stuff, you will not like it.
That it is definitely some stuff. Oh, real quick question with the chat room. Jay Tavera 732 asks, are there going to be audiobooks for your stuff at all?
Yes. So I'm working on the musical. It's just copyrights. So I'm going to be, as soon as I finish, I think the next part 4 and one more book, probably I Am Gamer, I'm going to concentrate on reading everything on and putting out my podcast for free. So you will be able to listen to my books for free in about 4 months, 3 months.
And you're doing all your own audiobook narration, which is very interesting. That's a choice. So we'll see how that works out.
Yeah. It's free.
Yeah. You get free. There you go. Free. That's what I always say. This is free. This is a free podcast. So I definitely understand that feeling. But there you go. That's it. Thanks everybody hanging out. Catch you later, guys.
Thanks everybody.
Hang out again. Remember to go read some more Little Bitty. Goodbye, everybody.